Jeremy, I'm Bart Kohler, born and raised here in Cincinnati. I'm a retired chief executive of Tact America Holdings, which is a publicly traded German company. I was responsible for the North American businesses. And North America Holdings is a collection of distribution, business-to-business distribution e-commerce companies. With the one I ran here in Cincinnati for 20-some years prior to selling it to the Germans in 2000. Jeremy, I've been with Ackerman 4 or 5 years now, and I believe I've got 4 different investments with them. Cincinnati is kind of a small town, so I knew Dobbs Ackerman, but really have known him for many, many years, but never actually invested in any of the funds that Ackerman has until about 4 or 5 years ago. Well, Jeremy, as I said, I've known Dobbs for many years and was always really impressed with his business, not even sure, of the investment side of it, but knowing that he was certainly in property management and prior to that had built houses as a kid, I think, growing up for his dad. And I liked his character an awful lot. One of the things that got me real comfortable then, obviously going beyond just a friendship with Dobbs Ackerman, was, these were guys that have been doing this a long time in the Midwest, with a lot of their own stake in the game. And it was really easy to get comfortable since it didn't represent real estate, let's say from New York City or LA or Miami. This is Midwest. And I'm a Midwest guy, as I mentioned, from Cincinnati. So certainly knowing them, knowing the fact that they've been around, Dobbs and even his father prior had been around for a long, long time. And also, frankly, the values that I knew him as an individual made it pretty comfortable, particularly when you looked at the investment. It wasn't exotic, high-risk stuff. It was pretty basic, safe Midwestern stuff for a Midwestern guy. Communication with Ackerman, a lot of it's through the website. So the website came up a few years ago, really good as far as content, detail. If I want to go back and look at a report from Q3 of 2 years ago, it's probably out there. So the ability to easily kind of self-serve model was real favorable. But on the other hand, if always have been encouraged, whether it's Chris, Dobbs, any of that group, if you have questions, to call them. And I've certainly bumped into them before, in Cincinnati and just around events that they've had where I've shown up. And they've always been very receptive to, if you've got questions, kind of one of these, there's no stupid questions. You're not a real estate expert. So if you don't understand when we're throwing a term around, bring it up and raise the point. I usually listen in on the quarterly calls, so it's always good to hear kind of firsthand, what's on their mind, what they see happening out there. Because again, you can read a lot in the Wall Street Journal, and you come in to these meetings thinking, wow, is this what I'm going to be seeing happen here in the Midwest? And an awful lot of times, what goes on here in the Midwest is not necessarily what's going on in New York City or in LA. So those quarterly calls are really valuable to kind of set the boat straight versus maybe what you're picking up and reading about and hearing, whether it's the Wall Street or Bloomberg. I was looking for some alternative investments, and I've done different ones. I've done venture, I've done distressed debt, and really, as I lined them up and looked at alternatives before I put any money into Ackerman, I was kind of looking for something. I like the Ackerman model a lot because of all the different things that I've done or I'm currently invested in. This one actually feels relatively less risky in the fact that it pays quarterly dividends. Some of the other stuff I've got, you're basically handing them capital and they'll see in 10 years. And they'll give you great reports and everything, and it's doing fine. But this thing actually is kicking money back every quarter, which is really kind of nice to have, in regards to that. So dividend paying, kind of mid-market housing in the Midwest felt a whole lot easier to get into, particularly if you're not used to this alternative investment, environment, than, let's say, getting into a hedge fund or even some of the other things that I've kind of dabbled in, distressed debt and so forth. So it was kind of on the spectrum of risk reward. It felt relatively safe given, the fact that there's some pretty exotic stuff in this alternative investment area that you can get yourself into. And again, based on the fact that I've known these guys for some time and they've been doing this for a long, long time. And frankly, they got a lot of their own personal money into it. Was pretty comforting for a guy who's not a real estate expert.